Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot, and today an exciting video for you. We are looking at the brand new LVFR or Latin VFR A340-300 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's always fun to see a heavy jet airliner arrive into Microsoft Flight Simulator, so we're going to see if this one stands up to the test. Is it worth your time and most importantly your money? I am a real-world airline pilot, so we'll use this to give you some extra context on your home simulation of this aircraft and give you a bit of a judgment on what I think of it, especially as it's an A340 and I spent a lot of my career flying the Airbus A320, which has a very similar flight deck indeed, so it'll be interesting to compare. I now fly the Boeing 787, so another heavy jet airliner, so I can also use a bit of that experience to compare as well. The A340 is a very interesting machine. It didn't exist for long. It first flew in 1991, entered service in 1993, and then by 2011 it was gone. That's because of having 4 engines was really just a way to get around ETOPS requirements so that this airplane could fly long-haul oceanic routes without having to be near another airport, and it opened that up. But as ETOPS, which allows you to fly long distances from airports with just 2 engines, as that became more normal and more possible to achieve, this aircraft fell out of favour. It also obviously burns a lot of fuel by having 4 engines, and it shares the same wing pretty much as the A330, so a lot of operators kept their A330s, but eventually the A340 fell out of favour, just becoming too expensive as the fuel prices went up. I found a good quote on Wikipedia for it, which came from the CEO of Air France KLM, who said it's a flying tanker with just a few people on board. So I like that. The reason being, if you have 4 engines, you have to carry a lot of fuel, and as you take off with all that fuel, you have to burn a lot of the fuel, carrying the extra weight of the fuel. So it becomes very much a diminishing return sort of thing. But there we go. LVFR advertises on the store page as having some things like highly detailed external and interior model with high definition textures. It's got fuel dumping, auto trim tanks, and they do say customized systems including basic functionality in the cockpit. And we'll see today that some of this I think is a little more what you'd expect, and some of it is a little less what you'd expect. There are some great features in this airplane, but it is an airplane of 2 halves at times, and we'll see what I mean as we take it for a flight. We're going to fly from here in Heathrow, just a short hop over to Amsterdam, give the airplane a bit of a test, try out its handling in the air, and try out as many of those systems as we can. As ever, I am a real-world airline pilot, but this isn't to give you any real-world advice, it's just for some extra context on your home simulations. I hope you enjoy. So as ever, we're going to start by looking at the exterior model of this airplane and the texturing. As I said, high detailed is what they've described it as well as high definition textures. Now, high definition textures doesn't mean they have to look good, it just means they have to meet a certain resolution requirement as far as I'm aware. So you'll see what I mean by that. If we go along the top of the wing, I actually really quite like it. It has some nice texturing. You can't get too close. It's not up with the Phoenix by any means, the Phoenix A320, but as you move along, it's perfectly functional and I think looks good in the simulator. As well, the livery is fantastic, by the way. It does come with several liveries of the operators of the A340-300, including Virgin Atlantic, and I think the livery is actually really very nice. They've done a great job with it. You see these little stain marks coming down from the windows, so nice texture in the cut here in emergency. This red square it's put there so that emergency services can break into the airplane from the outside if it's had an accident, and they won't pierce electrical or hydraulic line, things like that. So it's sort of a safe area for them to cut through without risk of causing more problems. But you'll see if we go to the bottom of the wing, it sort of falls apart slightly. Yeah, we have this decal for the jet fuel pressure, but otherwise incredibly plain, in my opinion. There are some textures on the bottom of the flaps, there's a couple of rivet holes, but these airplanes, as we know from the Phoenix, and of course in the real world, are absolutely covered in all sorts of screws and panels and all sorts. And this is not a new airplane, this is a generation old, so it would have plenty of that around. What's interesting is as you get to the engines, the textures actually do sort of improve somewhat. We have the nice oil stains behind the thrust reverser, bucket doors, and sort of marks around the cowling and so on. So there's some nice decals, and there are some nice bits to it. But then there's also some sort of omissions, like there's just these big blank grey areas. You know, it has modelling for the lights, which is nice, and from a distance works absolutely fine. So no complaints from me about that. But yeah, looking under this wing, you know, why does that have to be quite so plain? So I don't know if I'm nitpicking or whether that's just something I would expect to see these days. Engine looks lovely though, I can't fault that. The intake and the fan, all really, really nice. So, you know, this is what I mean. There's some really great parts to it, and then a few bits that are just a little bit missing, in my opinion anyway. Some nice detailing is that your livery also brings you nice liveried stairs and so on, so that's pretty cool. I like that, branded air stairs for the airplane, something you see less and less of these days in the real world, funnily enough. Yeah, and then we've got the pitot. So modelling wise, because it is of course texturing and modelling, I think they've captured the shape of the A340 just right. It looks just like it. I really like it with those little engines. The A340, of course, uses 4 CFM56 engines. These are the A320's engines, if you fly on a CFM A320, of course. So yeah, interesting to see them just use 4 of them for this heavy aircraft. This was designed to come in after the A300 was getting retired. It was sort of a replacement for that. Uses an 8 across seating, so it's a little bit narrower than some modern aircraft, and takes some sections from the A300, which is quite interesting. But yeah, it does have those 4, and it's famous for being a little bit underpowered compared to some other aircraft. When you see them take off, A340s often have some exciting rotations where they appear to be struggling to get in the air, although of course they'll all be calculated quite carefully. Moving down the other side, you can see here more nice decals, and these are a good resolution. You can go up right close and read them. So no complaints particularly there, and some really nice texturing. The different textures of the materials you can see as you move around the airplane. But again, these big blank wings do bother me a bit. Underneath the airplane, not too bad. Got some more decals, and here we do have some panel lines. They are just sort of texturing, but they are there. And yeah, they're okay. They're okay. Like I say, some really good bits, and then some less good bits. Same on the tailplane. You can see that we've just got these textures of these rivets and so on. But again, why are they missing from the wing? You know, even some texturing would be better than what we've got, which is just the plain grey. But still, from a distance, a lovely looking model, and some really nice, like I say, sort of different reflections and different textures going on in certain places. If we jump into the aeroplane, if I can do that for you, it does come preloaded with some nice, really nice actually, some of the best I've seen wing views. I'll show you that. And there you go. And you can see here, look how nice that wing looks when you get the light right and you've got the sun shining on it. Really, really, really nice. Sort of all the marks and grease and oil. So it has its moments, certainly. And they definitely worked harder on the top of the wing than the bottom of the wing. So I get the sense that they focused on the bit they knew we'd see more, and lovely wing views of the cabin, because it does have a cabin, as you'll see here, which is also very nicely done. I'm not overly fussed about cabins myself. I don't mind the Microsoft Flight Simulator strategy of just having a cabin area around the window, so we just get a window to look out of. I don't really need a full interior, but they have done one, and it looks good. Yeah, no complaints about that. And slightly customized for yeah, which livery you've chosen. So that's all good. So there we go. Let's hop in the flight deck and have a look in there. So on the flight deck now, and let's get it powered up. This won't be an A340 tutorial. I've done lots of Airbus tutorials on my channel, so do check those out if you'd like to learn how to fly an Airbus. It will be very similar because Airbus has kept their procedures as close as possible. But yeah, let's get the flight deck powered up. So we're going to do things like check the gear lever is down, the engine mode selector is normal, the master switches are off. We would check that the weather radar is off. Not entirely sure where that would be on here. It looks like it's here. So weather radar in the off position. The wiper selector should be off, and the batteries, let's check the voltage. Well, it's not showing up yet, unfortunately, so we'll just turn those on. Good voltage. I'll put the AP battery on, and then we'll turn on the external power. I'm going to line the IRSs. They were actually in the off position. This is just me messing around setting up the video, so we'll put them into nav to align. And we'll see what happened to the airplane. So you heard some warnings and so on. There was that triple click, which is the autopilot. Sorry, it wasn't the triple click, it was the autopilot disconnect sound, but there we go. Yeah, it's alive. You know, we have the door oxygen system page automatically. It does show us the cargo bulk, and as we look outside, you'll see that those are open down here. So that's good, but then you see that the doors show that they are closed with the slide arms, yet obviously the slides shouldn't be armed. And we do have the stairs attached, so you know you can't quite get to that full level of simulation, but it is sort of there. It is sort of there. You can brighten up your MCDUs, which we'll do now, and I'm going to get some lights on in the flight deck, of course. So you'll see here, not a lot of these switches work. Some do, and quite a lot don't. The exterior lights do tend to work a bit better, but what you can do is you can adjust these lights down here. So there are lights that do work. And then there's just some, like I say, some that don't. I'm just going to turn up all the screens, make that nice and visible. Good. Right, so let's run through a bit of an... Oh, there you go. There's our map lights, so that does work. So we'll get rid of that. Good. On the overhead panel then, we've got the IRSs in nav. Nothing else much to do over here. I'm going to put the strobe lights to auto and the nav lights to 1. Well, no smoking to auto. Seatbelts off for now. We haven't fueled up yet. And I'm going to start the APU. So master switch on. Now on the real airplane that will bring up the APU page, but there we go, we can go to it here. This should light up because you've now powered the VADEC control for the APU, and you'll see that it doesn't. So, you know, basic functionality is the key word here. The APU screen does work, it does turn on, but it's not quite, you know, we're not at Phoenix level, obviously, not even close. You can also see the text, the text and font is not quite right on these screens. It's all a little bit different, just a little bit not quite you'd expect, and quite crisp, a little bit over crisp. Does look like a computer screen, but there we go. It doesn't look like you're looking through a screen, if that makes sense. It just looks like the original screen image before it ends up getting warped by an LCD or a CRT. Good, so APU is coming online. You'll also notice things like the electrical page we can see here. So we've got some parts of it showing, the APU gen is showing. So yeah, some of it's there, We'll go back to the door page. Moving along, we're going to make sure anti-ice is all off, cabin pressure is all in the auto position. Not that any of these switches actually work. You'll see here you can turn on and off the engine bleed, you can turn on the APU bleed. If we look at the bleed page, this is where we take air from the engines and provide them for pressurization and heating of the engines and wings and so on for anti-icing. You'll see here that the packs are actually already running, so although I can go up here and turn off the engine bleeds and the APU bleed is already off, it doesn't seem to make much difference because this is all running anyway, even though there's that line sort of closed. And you can't turn off the pack itself, you see. So yeah, some of it's just sort of a bit of a visual representation. Now we're on the APU. I've got the APU generator on, I believe. Let's go to the electrical panel. APU gen is on. If we go to electrical in here, it doesn't really show us much, but it does show it's on. So I'm going to turn off the ground power, and you'll see that causes a bit of a problem, which is why I've done that now, because it does lose a few things and clunk and change around. I'm not sure. And then we've actually lost the APU, you see. I'm going to restart it, so I'm not sure why that's happening. I don't think that's realistic to the real aircraft, but here we go. Hopefully we've caught that in time. There we go. So we're now on the APU. So yeah, swapping over between the APU and GPU does not really work very well unless I'm missing something about the A340 where they would do it differently. Generators fault lights are on, which is correct because the generators aren't running, so that is good. I'm going to turn on the fuel pumps. You can't test any of the engine fire stuff, you can't run the engine fire stuff, but I wouldn't really expect that. They did say basic functionality in the cockpit, so that's okay, and none of this stuff works over here either. Good. Moving down, I'm going to put it into QNH, of course. Turn up the brightness. Does work quite nicely. Go to constraints. Put 6,000 in for the stop altitude and set the correct QNH. 1005. That's good. And moving down, I'm going to have the terrain on the navigation display. Brakes are off. Anti-skid nose steering is in the on. This is all just like an A320. It's amazing how close it is. And moving down, thrust levers are at idle. Masters are off. Speed brakes are disarmed. Flaps are up. And transponder should be in the standby position. There we go. Brakes on, weather radar is off. Good. Let's load up the MCDU. So this, again, looks representative, but doesn't quite work as you'd expect. So you can go, so we're going to do diff strip. Data, init A, flight plan, secondary flight plan, radnav, init B, performance. So if I go data, aircraft status, there we go. Bit out of date, but that's probably my sim. And it's A, we're going to load in our route. Now, you can load in your route from SimBrief, which is pretty cool. So all you have to do is go to SimBrief and type in your ID. So that does work. I've typed it in, and it brings up SimBrief right in the EFB. There's our flight plan. You can synchronize the plan, I suppose, if you changed it, synchronize the payload, and synchronize the fuel. Wow, look at that change. We won't have much fuel. Yeah, 12.1 tons. This airplane can hold over 100 tons of fuel, so that is very light. But we're going to keep it light because that's going to help us just get an... Actually, no, we're not. We're going to start. I'm going to load in too much fuel to start with, just so we have a heavy takeoff weight. So let's go up to 60% of our fuel. So that should be 60 tons. And then we've got a heavy takeoff weight just to try out the performance on takeoff. And then I'll lower that for the landing. Pretty fun. Good, so that has loaded in, and now we can go to init A. Now, how do I get this to load in my route? That is the question. Ah, it has done it. It's loaded in my route anyway. So there we go, from Heathrow, 9 right, it's already put in a departure for us, which the real one wouldn't do, and there's our flight plan all the way through. So that's the init A and flight plan. So now secondary flight plan doesn't work, but that, yeah, I wouldn't expect it perhaps. I'm just going to put in the cost next to 22. We've got a cruising of 290, so time for the init B page, where we can see our 038 160.1, which is what I expected, I believe. Estimated 038 162. So yeah, there we go. Take away 222 tons, which is what we're at with our 62 tons of fuel. Perfect. So that's init B. The rest of it doesn't really work. If I wanted an alternate fuel of, let's say, 5 tons, you can see it's not really working. But again, basically, you can do it. Let's get some more lights on, actually. Where are they hidden? Always hidden somewhere. There we go. That's better. Good. So data, init A, flight plan secondary, radnav, yeah, we're just going to leave it to auto tune. Init B we've done, and finally it will be performance. So bringing you onto performance, they do give you a performance calculator. I do like this. So synchronize the weight, 222 tons, there it is. CG 34.85, that's very aft, I'm surprised at that. Flaps 1 we want, anti-ice off, air conditioning can stay on, and we're going to take off from Heathrow, 9, right, there it is. Check the weather, calculate. Flaps 1, 151, 151. So I can go flaps 1, and this is quite handy. You can just click next to them and it puts them in. So I do like that, 166. I assume it's just a table, but there we go. I don't know, and it does work pretty well. Flexing to temp 55, which we've now got. It won't show yet, but there we go. Okay, so we've got the APU on, we've got the bleed air on. We're on the APU power. We don't need the external power anymore. We've loaded the airplane. So next you can go to your ground services and we can actually get rid of all these trucks and stairs and cones. And you'll see that the airplane is now getting ready to go. We have quite a long taxi. We're going to taxi over here, left down, and take off from 9 right. But yeah, airplane is now clean. You can hear the APU noise is running on the outside. It does even have the sort of starter clicking, so I do like that. I must say, I know a lot of simulators add in the clicking sound of the igniters when your APU starts. I've never heard that on an aircraft when I've heard the APU starting on a walk around, and I have heard it before. But there we go. Why was I press lights? Ah, you can do the cabin lights. Look at that. That's pretty cool. And you can open the door. Ah, that's how you open the doors. So would they now show up on our doors page? Yes, they do. There we go. So, not bad, not bad. And nicely controllable from the EFB. So we do have a checklist as well. Gear pins and covers removed. You just sort of tick it and it goes green. It's a bit of an odd one. Fuel quantity, we have 62 tons, about 50 tons more than we need. Seatbelts are going on. ADIS are in nav. BARF are both set to 1005. And you sort of type it in. It's quite an unusual system, that, but not a bad idea. I wonder if we'll see that get adopted one day in the real world, but there we go. Parking brake is indeed set. Takeoff speeds and thrusts, we've got them all set. 51, 51, 66, and it doesn't show up there, but we have a flex of 55. Windows closed. Ah, now that, and then beacon can go on. So let me put the beacon on. The transponder would also go on. And here we run into one of our first sort of bugs with the airplane. So if you turn the flight directors off, you should blank out the FMAs, and then you'd expect them to, when you turn on, arm, climb and nav. Now unfortunately it's gone into VS0. I think that's going to fix when we set takeoff thrust. But this is sort of a theme of the avionics of this airplane. As lovely as this airplane is on the outside, the avionics I have found to be a little bit unreliable and temperamental. It means that I would fly it on VATSIM. I think it can. You can see that we've got a flight plan, we've got a SID and a star, but you really are relying on it playing ball the whole time. I haven't seen it totally give up yet, but yeah, this is sort of an interesting one. So that would be an issue on a real Airbus. You wouldn't expect that. But there we go. Because we've got the 6,000 feet in the window, it should just be a case of turning the flight directors off and on. But I think as we set takeoff thrust, that will sort itself out. You can also see here, if I go to plan, we do have the departure, but it's just got itself all confused about where it's actually routing. It should be a Brookman's Park departure. There we go. Okay, now it looks better. Yeah, it's not quite as stable as you might hope it would be. And we'll see how it goes and see if it handles it for today's flight. But anyway, we've got the beacon on. Let's get pushed back and get underway. So to pushback, I'm going to go to our ground services, and then you can just change it over to pushback, and then literally push the back arrow. As we look outside, you see the tug now connects. Isn't it just beautiful though? Again, I think they've, like I say, really nice exterior model in general, and you'll see as it gets in the air, the wing flex and everything is lovely. They've done a really nice job on those parts of it. They've sort of captured the important bits of the A340. Even you can even see from here, you know, bits of streaks behind the engine pylons. It does look nice. There's no denying it. So tug connects as per usual, and we're going to push back, and I'm going to get the nose to face. We want it to go to our right. Otherwise, I think we're in a pretty good place. You can see down here, park brake, AP available, AP bleed. So these sort of memos are working, and they are roughly in the right place. I'm not sure why the flaps are so dim. I don't think they dim them on this airplane, but there we go. Tug's ready to go, so release the brake, and off we go. What a beauty. And there's our nice view of 4 engines. Always reassuring. Who wouldn't want to have 4 engines when flying over water? Why wouldn't you? So I can now steer the tug a little bit. Bit of a direction. There we go. That is a very gentle steering. And by the way, this brings me on to my next concern, and I wonder if this is the reason for this steering not working, is the hydraulics. So you'll see that if I go to the hydraulic page, the hydraulics are all pressurized. Now, the engines aren't running. You can see the engines aren't running, so there shouldn't be any hydraulic pressure. You can't actually turn off the hydraulic pumps, and I suspect that's blocking the nose gear from turning. It's an absolute guess, but you'll see as well. Let's stop the pushback. I'm also not entirely sure what to do, so I'm going to set the parking brake and then disconnect the tug. I hope that works. You'd never do that in the real world, of course. That'd be incredibly dangerous. Disconnect tug. Please stop pushing me, tug. There we go. That was getting close. You'll see as well that the engines aren't running, but the flight controls are all pressurized. They aren't drooping. So yeah, that is a bit of a big system, I think, to be missing. That's a pretty basic system, some sort of hydraulic functionality, and clearly it's all working, because it shouldn't be at this stage, but there we go. Off goes the tug. Now, you wouldn't notice that unless you were looking for it like me, but still, I think that's a pretty basic system that should really not be pressurized at this time. But there we go. Anyway, they go away, so let's start the engines, and this is something that does work. The engine start process is pretty good. If you put the mode select to, or engine start switch to ignition start, then you get the engines ready to go. You could start one, and it does work. And I've tried this. I've turned off the APU bleed, and it doesn't start the engine, so that's good. It means that the bleed system is somewhat represented, which is good to see. So you do have to have the bleed on for the APU for the engines to actually start. So there we go. Now, I don't know if the A340 can start 2 engines at once. I'm really not sure. I would hope so with 4 engines, but yeah, it would take a while otherwise. But a relatively nice start-up process. By the way, talking about texturing and modelling, look at these wheels. Really nice job, and the whole landing gear is done with like nice bit of grime and everything. And I think it just stands out suddenly that you look up and the wings are so plain. It's some really, yeah, like I say, an airplane of 2 halves at times. But there we go. Just starting the last 2 engines now. Coming to life. Okay, let's now do the after start flow. The engine's running. Let's see if I can remember it. So we don't need the APU bleed, we don't need any of the anti-ice, and we don't need the APU either, so I'll turn those off. I'm going to arm the ground spoilers. That should have gone to normal straight away, and we'll set the flaps to 1, which is our takeoff flap setting. And we need to set our trim. If I go to our performance, we had a trim of 34.85, which is, yeah, pretty far forward, so 34.85. Now I have found that this airplane does tend to rotate a bit early, so I might, I'll make sure we're not nose up anyway. There we go, so 34.85 on the trim wheel. The A340-300, the long one, had auto trim setting, so maybe you couldn't mess this stage up. Yeah, so I think that's done. I'm trying to remember now, it's been a while since I've done the Airbus after start flow. If we go to our checklist, hopefully it will help us. So after start, anti-ice is off, ECAM status is checked, we haven't got any messages, we can press status to prove that. I don't think many would work anyway. Pitch trim is set to 34, rudder trim is neutral, and that's it, we're ready to go. Rudder trim is down here, 0.0 units. So we're going to taxi over to the runway in this direction, so I'm going to put the taxi light, turn off lights, and let's go. Park brake released, bit of power, we're pretty heavy, remember we're actually at a decent weight for this airplane for once. Look at that, I love seeing that wing. It's going to take a bit of oomph to get going on a tight turn like this. A long haul airplane you wouldn't want to push back at straight like we have, because it means that they have to rev up the engines to do a silly turn like this and get very close to other parked aircraft. And you'll see here more FMA issues, or woes as I might start calling them, on the PFD. Let me just get the airplane now onto the taxiway. Not turning very tightly, but there we go. Yeah, as you look here, you can see it's now got speed, which is not accurate because, of course, the engines aren't in auto thrust. They're not aiming for that target speed. Yeah, the FMAs are a little bit confused at times. Now, taxiing, it does feel nice. It feels like a heavy airplane. I think it should turn a little bit tighter than it does, but it does feel good. If you want to get the centre line under the nose gear, you put the yellow line between the two screens, just like you would on the A320, and look at that. Running on the yellow line, just about. Right, let's head down. This is a bit sporty for a heavy airplane like this. I'll take the left here, and then we'll be on the south side of the airport. Now, it's not actually the longest plane in the world. It's a pretty big one, but it's it holds 250 passengers, so it's bigger than the 787 that I fly in terms of passenger numbers. But it's not it's not the largest thing out there. It's not a 747. It's not a 777-300 either. It's quite nicely proportioned. I used to always prefer the 600, but the more I've spent time with the 300, which is quite common with me in airplanes actually, spend a bit of time with them and I start to like them. There you go, I've oversteered too much there. But yeah, I think it actually looks quite nice now. It's grown on me a lot. Okay, so in a second we'll do our flight controls, which again I believe would bring up the page for that on the flight control page on the status display, but it doesn't seem to do that. But yeah, let's have a look. Does the flight control check work? Flight control. There it is, yeah, right aileron. The rudder's moving. Left aileron, left spoilers. Elevator up, elevator down, rudder right, rudder left. So yeah, that does work. Very nice indeed. There's some cool sound effects as well as you sort of trundle along. You get some nice sort of rumblings and rattles, which I do like. So we're going to now make a right turn, head down to 09 right for takeoff. Right, here we are lined up on the runway. So I have set the auto brake. Oh, I did set the auto brake to max. I think it might have failed. Yeah, auto brake to max. We've got all our lights on. Passengers are warned. Takeoff config is all ready to go. Now, I didn't have to press takeoff config for it to do that. So again, it shouldn't go green until we've done it. There we go. At least I believe not. If it's the same as the A320, it could be different, but I doubt it. But there we go. We've got our route. So here's our line. Nav is armed. We're going up to 6,000 feet initially, and we've got our speeds in. So time for we've done the after start. So taxi checklist we should have done already before now, but there we go. So flight controls are both checked. Flaps are at 1. Radar PWS can go on. I had to see that. There we go. PWS doesn't actually move, but there we go. We're on weather radar, and I'll put it to weather radar and turbulence. Good. Engine modes. So radar PWS on. Engine mode set to normal. Eco memo, takeoff, no blue. That's done. Line up, takeoff runway, TCAS, and pack 1 and 2 are staying on. So that's the lineup checks complete. Just make sure we have the TCAS and TR, which we do. Good. So we're now ready to go. Here's our beautiful machine, and let's see if those FMAs can fix themselves. It does. I know I keep saying it, but it does look absolutely lovely. Okay, let's go. So what we're going to do is release the parking brake. You'd hold it on your toe brakes. We're going to spool up the engines to let them stabilise together. We've got lots of engines. That's good. And then I'm going to run the thrust levers through the flex MCT, which is there. Now it's on to Mantoga. There we go. Bring it just right into the notch. So we get flex 55. There's no SRS, but it has gone into runway, and you'll see why. SRS doesn't seem to want to appear until we're already underway. I have noticed that. It is banking a little bit with the wind, which is a surprise, but there we go. Rolling along. Quite nice. The ground handling is quite good, actually. The rudder is not overly effective. It's not too grippy. I think it might be a little bit under effective at times. There's V1, and SRS now appears, which is too late, but there it is. And rotates. Rotation feels nice and heavy. You do have to keep pulling a bit more than I would expect. Let it weathercock into wind. And you have to really keep pulling out now, which I think is a bit overdone. But positive climb. Gear up. And now we're into sort of the Airbus normal law. It does come to line. See, SRS is just doing absolutely nothing. It should be speed reference system. It should be our vertical mode, and it's just trying to drive the airplane towards the ground. I don't know what it's based on, but there we go. Nav also should have engaged, but it doesn't. It stays armed until you actually engage the autopilot. So there we go. So if I put the autopilot in, you'll see that now suddenly it does the right thing. It goes into nav. Oh no, it's dropped out. It's just not happy. So let's bring the nose back round. Let's just fly the airplane for a moment. We're above acceleration altitude. I'm going to bring the thrust levers back to the climb gates. There we go. That should engage the auto throttle and put it into thrust climb, which it has, which is good news. We can now lower the nose. And you can see climb mode's engaged, and that is working. So the SRS, which is a speed reference system mode used for takeoff in the Airbus, doesn't seem to function properly at all. It appears late. It doesn't work very well when it's going. There may be ways to make it work better than that, but yeah, it shouldn't really. It all got messed up, I think, earlier on when the FMAs all went. We're above the airspeed, so flaps can go up, which they are. Now it's banking right, because nav... So nav is clearly working. It shows it as nav arms, but actually I think nav is engaged because the lateral mode is correctly trying to fly this green string. So that's good. It does work. It's just not shown right. But there we go. So let's put the autopilot in. There's nav. And now the flaps are up. We can disarm the ground spoilers. And we'll get rid of the turn off the taxi lights. Good, so we made it. We made it. Climbing up 6,000 feet. It does have a vertical mode, so it has the altitude constraints above 3, above 4. And yeah, thrust, climb, nav, autopilot 1F, 1FT2 auto thrust. This is correct. This is what I would expect. Beautiful. So as you can see, some parts of it work just fine, and some parts it sort of lets you down a little bit. I think the more you know about an Airbus, the harder some of these things will be to stomach, because you're going to get confused by the things it's doing wrong. Whereas if you just fly it and just keep flying it as any other airplane, you'd probably manage just fine. You can see there we did manage the departure. We are on the SID. You know, it is functioning. There's thrust climb out start. The question is, this is just under £25, or pretty much £25 that I paid for it, and is it worth that? There is some fierce competition in the Airbus landscape. You really are just paying for the A340 novelty, as it were, because when it comes to this stuff, the fly-by-wire A320X is, I think, more functional in many ways, and of course the Phoenix is leagues ahead in terms of detail and functionality of the avionics. Now they do say, as I said, that this is basic cockpit functionality, but I think things like the hydraulic system not running should really be working. While we're here, let's have a look at some of the texturing. Actually, they've done a really nice job in the cockpit. Look at the wear and tear on these pedals around the edges. Really nice. The tray table does even fold out. Look at that. Nothing to complain about there. Handles worn out. Some areas you just go, oh, really? Like this window panel is a little bit empty, and it's a little bit in your view. I would expect it to be a bit nicer, especially as the footwell area is so lovely. Something that we're not really going to look at too much. Overhead panel as well, it's fine. It's actually pretty good. I do quite like the texturing in here. Look at this overhead sort of texture here. And more modelling that they've done, like the sunshades. You know, this is good stuff. Nice to see. There is a way to get this one down. There it is. Look at that. Quite impressive. Not all airplanes do have these things. So yeah, some areas are good, and again, some areas are lacking, certainly. Right, let's climb up to our cruise altitude now. Let's see if we can get that to work. We'll do an open climb up to 290. Frankly, that's probably too high for this route. We'll see if we get there. Thrust climb, open climb, 290. And we can run through... That's the parking checklist. Where's our next checklist? That's the departure change checklist. That's pretty cool. Next is the approach checklist. Yeah, so nothing to put there. Sun just shines so well along that wing. And there's a bit of that wing flex I was talking about, outer engine pod. Interesting thing on the A340 is that when they first flew it, they had trouble with this outer engine sort of fluttering and flexing, so they had to reinforce the wing around that area to stop it from doing that. Anyone who's seen a 747 in the turbulence would have seen that outer engine bouncing up and down. So here we are, climbing away. As we discussed, we have too much fuel. Now, you wouldn't jettison fuel this low to the ground because it has a risk of reaching the ground and you don't want to put it over people's houses. But we'll just, for the sake of showing you that it works, we'll just show you the system. So the fuel jettison system is up here. Now, I don't think it works the same as the 787 system, so you'll have to forgive me. But if we go to the fuel page, you'll see here that we have fuel in the outer, and it does have fuel in the trim tank at the back as well. And then we got the outer tanks and the main tanks, and then the center tank's empty. We haven't got that in use at the moment. So what I'm going to do is just start jettisoning, and I'm sure this is not the procedure, but if we go up here, we can arm the jettison system. It doesn't really do much. We're above 10,000 feet now, so we'll just let the passengers wander around while we do this. Get rid of the landing lights. And I'm going to then do it. We've got way too much fuel, so open. You get the master caution jettison on, which I do like, master caution. So, you know, sometimes it works. Sometimes some of these things work. And there you go, jettison, little arrows going back, and it's leaving us behind. And you can see that fuel number just draining down. Now I think it's draining faster than the fuel using it up is going, but there we go. If we look outside, what's really cool is they have actually modelled it. We get a little contrail texture coming from the jettison, which will be about here. I think that's really nice detail, because I wasn't convinced there would be, but yeah, look at that. You can see that fuel just draining out the back of the airplane. An even more expensive way of flying the A340. So let's turn that off, closed. Now, I'm not convinced that was actually draining any faster. It sort of looked like we were doing it, but I don't think it was making much difference. But there we go. Let's just take the fuel back down. We wanted to start with 12 tons, which is really not much at all. So let's put it back to there. There we go, 11 tons. That'll do. So now we should be significantly lighter than we were, 171 tons, which should put us in a better place for being able to land. Good. Now, here's our route. It's the red for arrival. There's no point just climbing all the way up. I'm just going to stop at 15,000 feet. Let's stop at 19,000 feet. You can see we're actually running out of puff a little bit. This airplane is, not hugely overpowered, and it's nice to see it sort of feel like that. But what we can do while we're here is let's try out the fly-by-wire, the Airbus characteristics. I did a series called What is the Airbus and talked about this when I started my channel. The Airbus is fly-by-wire, and a lot of people confuse fly-by-wire for the flight control protections. So fly-by-wire is just the fact that the controls are electronically controlled. Boeing uses fly-by-wire systems, but still lets you just have direct control of the flight controls on some of their aeroplanes. Airbus has protections built in to the controls and what we have called normal law. Normal law means that the airplane responds certain ways to roll and pitch. It gives you a G-force change when you move the side stick in the pitch axes. And don't worry, you don't need to know this, but pitching up and down, you're actually telling the airplane, I want to pull 1.2 G up, and it does it. Likewise, I want to push 0.8 G down, these sorts of things. And same for roll, you actually command a roll rate. So I want a certain number of degrees change per second, and that's what it does. And the airplane then maneuvers the controls to make that happen. So it will adjust them until it's doing what your side stick is commanding. It will then, as a result of that, have the ability to prevent you going too far. It won't let you over-G the aeroplane. It will actually stop before you can get there. Likewise, it won't let you under-G, and it will have limits, so you can't pitch the airplane above 30 degrees, and you can't roll it past a 2.5 G level turn, so about 66 degrees. So let's see if any of that comes true in this airplane. So I'm going to turn off the flight directors. We should put us into speed mode, not BS mode, but there you go, the flight directors are off. And we can actually see as well, we do have a flight path angle bird, so that is there. It does work. The wind is coming from the right, slightly off to the left, so that's good. Again, we shouldn't have an FMA. I've turned them off, but there we go. And we can just set the speed. I'm just going to set it to about where we are. Let's just have 280 knots. Good. So I'm now going to try and overbank the airplane. I'm going to try and roll it past 66 degrees. And will it let me do it? No. Good. The reason it's like this is because it should be a 2.5 G turn. Now what is interesting is I'm not having to pull back on the side stick. You would in the real aircraft. It would actually stop trimming for you, but there we go. So if I let go, I want it to return to 33 degrees bank angle, because that's what the Airbus would do. And then it should just sit there. So it's gone to just under 30 degrees. That's not a terrible crime. And now if I go to sort of 20, it should just stay there. Yeah. 10. Yeah, nice. So it's close. Not perfect, but close. Let's try and nose over more than we should, so it shouldn't go below -15. And it most definitely does. So that's no good at all. So yeah, it doesn't have the pitch protections. If we pitch up, it shouldn't go over 2.5 G. I would bet this is what we're doing now. Let's have a look at those wings bending. Oh yeah, there they go. I mean, that could be 2.5 G, but let's see if it has an upper limit. It does, so it's stopping us. I think it's about 30. Maybe it's less on this airplane, but it is giving us a pitch limit in the top, so that's good. Now, if I was to just bring the thrust levers all the way back to idle, disconnect the auto thrust, will the airplane let me stall? Because the Airbus has protections, it shouldn't let us stall. So I'm going to hold full up side stick, keep the nose up here, and as the speed washes off, I'm expecting it to lower the nose and also go into alpha floor and provide full thrust for us. So there's alpha floor, so that has worked, very impressive. The thrust levers are in the idle position, but you can see here, the thrust is coming on anyway as it tries to protect us. So yeah, very good. And then we're going to toga lock, and it would actually stay in toga, it should stay in toga lock, but there we go. And now, once we get above alpha prot, or VLS that is, sorry, the nose will rise. So it should be alpha prot. It shouldn't actually drive us down that much. It should let us hold the nose up rather than dropping for all that time. So there is a semblance of it. It is in there. You can see there are some things working. Let's put it back into the climb gate for the thrust levers. And I'll put the auto thrust on. I want 280 knots, which it will now provide. We'll fly level for a minute. Yeah, there is a resemblance of the Airbus normal control law. I don't think it's perfect. It's a few degrees out on the bank, but mostly as well the stall system. It does have the protections, but they're not quite behaving as the real one would. Like I say, it should drive the nose all the way down like that. But again, it's perhaps a little bit fussy. However, when we have things like the Phoenix and the fly-by-wire available to us, you know, the standard of Airbus simulation in Microsoft Flight Simulator is very high. So there we go. Just something to test out, really. Right, so after all that messing around, we're now in thrust idle, open descent nav, autopilot 1, we're heading to the point Bratlow to start our arrival into Amsterdam. It's got us onto runway 27. I'm actually going to change it to the ILS 18 right via the Redford 1 Alpha, which is what we've got. Good. And normally you get radar vectors to it, so I'm just going to insert it as it is. It's gone amber on a, there we go, it's gone green. So brain is the next point it's got, then Gasper. So if I go to the direct page, I'm going to send direct to brain and insert. Now something a bit odd, you'll see here the green line takes a while. It doesn't behave quite like an Airbus. It doesn't show you the temporary line in advance, but it does eventually wake up. But again, the text is wrong, the shape and size of the font isn't quite right, the colours aren't always quite right. It's you know, these things are just, you get used to it. It works, but it's not the full Airbus simulation, is it? Speed out star. It's not miles and miles away, but still. Now, if I wind the range up a bit, there we go. I mean, this is certainly, you know, it's a lot more functional than the default A320 was when Microsoft Flight Simulator launched. That's for sure. Good, so there we go, and we're heading out to Brain and then in towards Redford. Now it does have a working VNAV, and you can see here Redford 230 or above. We're already below that, so what we'll do is I'm going to get past Redford and then just allow it to fly the descent itself. If we go to nav, we can actually see its plan, I'm hoping. So as I scroll through now, sorry, not nav, I need to go to plan. Dear me, there we go, right. And now we should be able to go to flight plan and scroll through the points, which we can. So that's good. That is good. Like I say, I think you could use this on VATSIM. So we're going to break off. We're heading towards RTIP, and we'll just head up and join the ILS 18 right from radar vectors. That's sort of the standard thing to do in Amsterdam. Now it's got itself stuck at 200 for some reason, even though it should be at 19. So let's just try and force it down. There we go, open descent. So having said I'd use it on VATSIM, you would need to be very careful. You do need to keep an eye on it. If I go to performance, you can see it has activated the cruise phase because we've gone above our 190. Progress doesn't show you the cruise and you can't change it in there, but there we go, it does have a progress. Can I put in the EHAM 18 right? No, so this is where we're starting to get too much for it. But there we go, let's move back to arc. There's that star. Okay, it's trying again. Better capture this time. We're going to do a low water rate landing onto that nice long 18 right in Amsterdam. And we'll go to the perf. Now there's no landing performance calculator, sadly. It's just a takeoff one. But there we go. As far as I'm aware, anyway. So, what we're going to do is put in the QNH and weather for Amsterdam. Okay, so we've done our flight plan we've set up. The RadNav ILS 18 right is tuned, 110.1. Progress page doesn't work. Performance page, we're in the cruise phase, but we can see in the approach we've got the correct QNH temperature. It's a bit taily onto that runway. Might actually get medium water brake for that. It's still a big aeroplane. And 190 on the minima. We've got flat full landing and yeah, put the go around sheet in as well. Oh, won't let us do that either. Fair enough. Fuel prediction doesn't really work, although it does have an estimated fuel on board 5.8. So you know, something there. Something going on behind the scenes. Secondary doesn't work either. So there we go. Right, so that's the airplane pretty much set up, and we're just going to need to fly our descent. Now they claim that this airplane has a VNAV, a working VNAV. Oh, and by the way, we never set standard. That's interesting. That would have been flashing on the real airplane, of course, but there we go. Getting too caught up with our adventurous flying up and down. Transition altitude 9,500. It's not actually, I think it's much lower into Amsterdam. Let's try setting that. So that should have been flashing away and it should go orange. But anyway, interesting one. We'll leave it on standard for now. They are synchronized. Good. That's star. So yeah, so if we were to now get a direct from air traffic control. Oh, and by the way, here's another little bug that doesn't work as you'd expect. So you can pull the heading, and the heading bug does disappear and then reappear. And then if in the real aircraft, if you were to do a direct now, so let's go direct to RedFR once you're in heading mode. So air traffic control put you in a heading for a while, and then they say direct to RedFR, and then you insert it. The great thing about the real aircraft is it does automatically go back into nav mode. It knows that you want to actually do what you just asked it to do. Boeing wouldn't, but there we go. So I actually have to tell it to go back into nav. So that's something to watch out for if you're an Airbus pilot in the sim normally. Yeah, so now I want to see if I can get a shortcut from air traffic control and see if it will wake up. So let's scroll through the whole flight plan, which seems to still be in here for some reason. And let's head to AM 607. Now there's our yellow line, that's good, and insert. And I'm hoping that would drop out most of the flight plan. So if we go to plan, there it is. So AM 607 and then in onto the ILS. So that has worked. It's left in these other waypoints though. So you know, like I say, it's quite fragile. And what I'm waiting for is to see if it figures out a top of descent for us now. But it seems to still have the top of descent or some sort of descent arrow hanging around over here at RTIP. So yeah, it's not really that functional, is it? These are correct though. It has sequence in the flight plan page of the MCDU. I quite like the design of the MCDU as well. I think they've done a nice job with it. Nice texturing and nice 3D model. Again, really nice texturing around the flight deck in places. It's really good. And then just a few blank spaces. There we are. Oh, not that one. There you go. Ah, now I've had this before as well, where it loses the interior texture, and I don't know why. It's a strange bug. But yeah, there's a lovely cabin. There it is, it's back. Good. Love that view, absolutely gorgeous. So, yeah, we don't seem to have any sort of VNAV. I've got a distance to go of 408 miles, which I don't also think is correct, because we've got about 100 miles to our waypoint, and then, I don't know, 10 or 15 miles on the ILS. So I think we're probably about 120 miles to go, so we'll need to do the descent ourselves. So yeah, you're going to need to be a little more involved and a little more aware of what's going on than on some of the other, or you need to be prepared for these sorts of things to fail on you. Because like I say, it's a bit fragile. I think it's arrive with 9.1 tons of fuel, which is not that likely. Not bad actually. Yeah, 1,500 kilos from now, once we start our descent, that might not be far off, surprisingly. Okay, so I have tried. I can't get the airplane to remove these points, and therefore the VNAV just isn't waking up. So I'm just going to head down to flight level 100. If I put it into descent, if I push in, it should start its descent, but you can see here I'm forcing it into des mode, so it should do 1,000 feet per minute until it intercepts the vertical profile. It's just staying in out cruise, so yeah, we've reached the limits of this, I think. So let's do open descent, speed, open descent, nav. So again, we're having to revert to more basic modes. A bit disappointed because I was expecting some sort of a VNAV to work. It did say VNAV is functioning, but VNAV is a very complicated thing, and yeah, here we are. It's not, at the moment, I don't think I have anything. It does have the vertical constraints, above 5.5, above 3,400, above 2,000. So I'm hoping it will wake up as we get closer, but I'm not optimistic, mainly because we just have nothing at the moment at all. It doesn't know we're going below profile or above it or anything. And you know, I gave it the cruise level. The real airplane would have figured this stuff out. So there we go. I'm guessing we had to fly the full original flight plan that it downloaded for any of this to actually work. Down we go. Absolutely love the wing views on this airplane. I could look at them all day. They're just great. Try out the speed brakes. So we're doing 3,200 feet per minute, 290 knots. Speed brakes out, half. Yep, they work nicely. Definitely getting the drag from those. There they are. We certainly don't need them, so I'll put those away again. Actually seems like quite a draggy aeroplane. The A340s cruise quite slow. They have quite an efficient wing. It's the same as the A330 though, so they tend to cruise around Mach decimal 8.2. For context, the 787 is around decimal 8.5, and the 777 will be about decimal 8.4. So yeah, a little bit slower. They are a little bit slower, which over a long flight would make a difference. You would notice that. But of course, as we said earlier, these airplanes got taken off those long routes as they started to become just too thirsty on the fuel. Performance, by the way, is very good, but you would expect that for an airplane with relatively simple underneath systems. Okay, we're descending down to flight level 60. I have managed to get it to go into DES mode now without blue for 60, so that's pretty good. But yeah, again, no clue of how high or low I am on the profile. It's just not interested in giving us that information. I wonder if I can delete some way. No, the waypoints aren't even in there anymore. No, I don't get it. I can't delete all these sort of spurious ones out here. Anyway, we'll stop worrying about that. Let's see if we can. Let's descend down to 3,000 feet, and then we can set the QNH. Not the QFE. QNH, which was, just make sure we get this right. It's 1006. There's speed mode, and it's in DES. Okay, so let's run the checklist. So, approach checklist, QNH 1006. Seatbelts, did I put them on? Nope. Put the landing lights on. And minimum is 190. Auto brake is on medium. Engine mode state 2 norm. That's it. We'll do the landing checklist from there. Hopefully the ECAM memo will work for that, which would be pretty good. So we are getting there. We need to be above 5,000 or flight level 55 at these points. But yeah, we'll imagine we're being radar vectored in now because of course there's no terrain issues here. Those constraints are all based on air traffic controls requirements. Oh, here we go. We were meant to do the right turn there and it's just suddenly taking us off to the left. Trying to head out to that R-tip point. If I go to flight plan, yeah, it's suddenly resequenced. Let's try again. Let's put direct to 607, insert, and I think that's the end of that. Oh dear. I don't know where it's taking us now. We're going to have to do it ourselves. Yeah, again, like I say, very fragile. I'm actually not so sure I would want to use this on VATSIM in its current state because we need to have some flexibility. Flying airplanes is incredibly dynamic, and yeah, this is just a little bit too uncertain. I think it's sequenced too close to one of the other the old waypoints, and that's dragged it round to thinking it needs to fly towards them. Because I'm trying to get to this runway over here. 607's behind us, and it just suddenly sequenced all over the place. Okay, let's do a big loop round back to 607, 608. See if we can convince it to work. We'll do 500 feet per minute while it does that. We've already overburnt on fuel, but the fuel prediction, yeah, it is sort of functional. I'm going to put the landing scales on as well, or the localizer scales, or whatever you want to call them. Those come on later. Seatbelts are on. Good. Right, let's bring the airplane round now. So we'll do a big left turn. Go. Remember, we are also going to fly this approach with the tailwind, so yeah, it should be interesting. Now here's another little issue. The flap speed for flap 1 is 240 knots, which is what you would expect for an airplane as big and heavy as this. However, when you put out flap 1, it gives you the flap 1 plus F speed. Now 1 plus F is used for takeoff, not the approach. So yeah, when I move it into the 1 position, the flaps go to 1. I expect the speed limit to be 240, but it actually drops it to 215, which can make it quite difficult to start configuring without getting a master warning of some variety. Right, let's do another direct 607. I know I keep repeating myself. But I'm only asking for one thing, airplane. There it is. Okay, let's try that again. Nav. but still no vertical guidance as such. Again, I'm not saying it can't do it, I just don't think it's robust, and I haven't seen it work so far. Also, look at this, Cat 3, you know, just lots of these little things, and this is not the cheapest add-on we've ever seen. You know, £25 is not totally free. You know, it's £50 for the Phoenix A320. It's half the price. I don't know. It depends how much you love the 340. I think that's going to be the theme here. I really like it. I can forgive this for a lot of things, but this would get frustrating if I was trying to do VATSIM direct to approach points and so on, which is sort of normal. It's out, we're at 3,000 feet. Now we are below the profile, but that's fine. The airplane should still know that I'm below the profile, whether or not I should be here. And you know, there's no reason not to be here if air traffic control center's down. Anyway, what we do have is the ILS, Victor Papa Bravo, 16 miles out, 3,000 feet. We're very, very low, of course, but yeah, that's worked. We do actually have a headwind for this approach, so that's nice. And we'll have flap 1 out. Crossing the coastline. Turning into a nice day here, really. And it's done it again. There's 607, there's 608, and it's trying to head for 602. So yeah, it's confused because it's sequencing to points that I can't delete. That's what's going on here. Oh, at least we're getting to the bottom of it. And now it's resequenced to 602. Yeah, okay. Alright, well, we'll do it in heading mode. No problem there. And we'll get ourselves over onto the ILS. So what I'm going to do now is turn on the intercept heading, 150, arm the localizer, localize arm, there we go, engaged already. That was a pretty late turn. Put that back to arc. I'll try and sequence the flight plan. If I bring 621 to the top, actually let's just do a direct to 62. No, you wouldn't do that now in the real Airbus, so it would sequence. So we'll put 621. So I go flight plan AM621 in. Okay, and insert. That seems to have worked pretty well. No, still trying to go to RTIP. Anyway, we'll stop worrying about that. Let's arm the approach. Let's get flaps 2 out. And also, what I do want to do is activate the approach phase. Now, I've had this before. In the cruise, it was giving us the option to activate the approach phase, but now I don't have that option. So if I manage the speed... Ooh, maybe it has worked. It should go to the F speed now. There's thrust idle. Okay, it's working better here. Be at 133. I'm not sure why it's showing 130. And I'm not sure why it's going that slow. It should do the F speed. Okay, that hasn't worked either. So let's put it back to sort of 160 knots. We have got flap 2 out. That should be safe. Yep, speed, glide slow. Down we go. Put the go and chute in. BS window should be blank, but that's a small one. Small issue. And down we go from 3,000 feet, 8.3 miles. There's the runway. Yeah. This is really where we're showing up some of, like I say, the avionics.
2,500.
There's a radio altimeter, 2,500, which is correct and good. Makes sense. QNH1006 obviously working well for us. So we're going to need to put the speed in ourselves. 133 VAP. Now let's have a look at the gear. Let's drop the gear, have a look at the detailing. Again, some nice, really nice parts to this. Love that texturing there. Got a few bugs here. That's some sort of light or animation has popped out to the side and back in again. Now they do tilt, which is nice. They don't always look spot on with their contact with the runway, but they do tilt on approach, which is correct with 340. Good to see. You see here, it doesn't do a great job on the old glide slope, sitting low. So let's just configure fully. We'll arm the ground spoilers. Go flaps 3. Speed of 133. Flaps full. And now we are fully configured. Get those nose lights on. And landing memo is all green. We're in speed mode. Excellent. Now, goodness knows if the go around would work, as it is. Well, it wouldn't. It's not sequenced at all, and it doesn't have a go around in there at all either. So that wouldn't work. So you have to fly that yourself. But yeah, there we go. Now it's going a bit higher on the glide slope. It does basically manage. I'm going to leave the automatics in until quite late. We are 2 whites, 2 reds. I just want to see how it behaves, if it arms itself for an auto land and so on. I'll be curious to see. We are stable at 1,000 feet. That's good news. 2 whites, 2 reds. Still just enjoying the visuals on it though. So of course we do expect it to sort of arm its auto land systems, but I'm not sure it's going to do that. It does say Cat 3. I should have given it a second autopilot. Oh, you can't do that. It only takes 1 autopilot at a time. That's okay. The Airbus can auto land on 1 autopilot, but we will do a manual landing today. So I'm expecting the FMA to change to land. By 350. There it is, land. Okay, fair enough. Right, it's getting itself high, so I'm going to take the autopilot out. That completely, the flight directors get all confused there. So there we go. But we can leave the auto thrust in. It's doing quite a good job. The auto thrust system is very good actually. No complaints there.
Minimum.
A little bit high. It's actually a very stable airplane on final. It's quite sluggish, that's the only thing.
50.
Then it suddenly gets sensitive.
30.
Idle. I'm not sure what's happened there. There we go.
Retard.
There's touchdown. Bit of left rudder, holding the nose up, get the reverses out. Nose down. Yeah, it suddenly went way out of trim in the flare. So just as we were okay, that's more than enough raking. Just as we were in the flare there, I was having to push forward on the side stick to stop it from just going back up again. Not sure what happened there, but we have made it down. Potentially a trim issue or something like that, not sure. That was very odd. So yeah, it's definitely okay to land, but that was an interesting one. That was an interesting one. I'm not sure quite what it was doing. Let's get rid of the auto brakes. So there you have the LVFR A340-300. So what do you think of it? Well, I'm hoping this video will help you make up your minds if you think it's worth your hard-earned money to spend on it. Like I say, just under £25. It'll be whatever currency the Microsoft Marketplace translates it. It does it from dollars, I believe. But yeah, it's, for me, I love the A340 and I have enjoyed my time with it. Will I be flying it around a lot? I don't think I'll be taking it on VATSIM just in its current state. There's just too many bugs going on with the avionics and the MCDU and the flight planning for it to be workable. It's also not great if you're a beginner. You're going to struggle with the fact that you need to really babysit it. Its VNAV isn't quite there, or if it even bothers to show up at all. The resequencing of the flight plan and so on. So if you're new to flying or new to flying on VATSIM, this airplane would make for, I think, quite a stressful experience. If you're very experienced with the airplane and you're comfortable with the Airbus and you know what it should be doing, then I think you probably would find this, although slightly frustrating at times, you'd be able to see through the gaps in it and enjoy it and just get the airplane around where you want it to do. You've got to really know what you want the airplane to be doing, as clearly it's not going to help you out too much. There are also a few disappointing handling issues with it. Like I say, in the flare there, it definitely wasn't quite right, but it is serviceable. I have had some landings in it where it's behaved really nicely actually, so I'm not sure that was just a bug on this flight or not, so I'll keep experimenting with it. But yeah, there are clearly a few bugs in the systems. The visual model and texturing though, I have really come to appreciate. I still think some parts need to be brushed up a bit to get them in line with the rest of the airplane, but a lot of it, the wings, the liveries are really super. Look at the detailing on the back of the flaps there. It does look nice, if not up to the best in the industry. I think the price point puts it at a fairly interesting place. It is cheaper than other Airbus simulations and provides a fairly decent amount of Airbus flying and a lovely visual model. But of course we do have to consider that the fly-by-wire A320nX is out there, which provides a really incredible Airbus avionics experience, certainly. But here we are paying for this developer to have put the time and effort into the airplane, the visuals and the sounds. So in total, for me, I don't regret buying it. I think it's nice. I will be flying it around a bit more because I really do love the A340, and I think that's who this airplane's really for. If you just had to have an A340, then this isn't the worst thing in the world. It is actually really quite charming in its own way. Just don't expect it to start treating you very well when it comes to flying around on VATSIM, but you will be able to get some lovely screenshots. You will be able to have and this is something I do like about it, the way it handles it on the takeoff roll and so on. It does feel like a big heavy aeroplane, and you'll be able to get that feeling that you wanted of taking that A340 lumbering into the skies for its long haul flight. I think that's really nice, and to have little systems like the trim tank and the fuel jettison working, and the EFB is also really nice, by the way. They've done a good job on that. So yeah, I actually think it's not a bad proposition, especially if you absolutely have to have an A340. Right, that's all for today's video. Do please let me know in the comments if you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you again in another video or live stream in the future. We may well take this out on a live stream, perhaps not on VATSIM, perhaps we'll try it out with Beyond ATC or something like that. But yeah, do please subscribe if you'd like to see more. That's all. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.